Hey there, Northwest Jeepcast fans. Hey, today I'm going to be showing you a little bit about rebuilding your RCV joints for a JK axle. I'm sure these steps probably work for any of the RCV joints, but obviously I have a JK, and that's what this axle is for. You can see I have everything apart, took off the unit bearing. Of course, to get to that, you got to take the brakes off, but tie rod is disconnected. That's because I was first starting with just doing unit bearings, then I realized, I might as well just do the ball joints while I'm here. So that's why I started disconnecting everything. And of course, to be able to get to the ball joints, you got to get this axle out of the way. The RCV axle, this boot, is actually larger than the hole in the reed knuckles that you see there. And so you can't just pull it out. You have to pop this boot off first. Watching the RCV videos, they don't actually show a whole lot about how to do it when it's inside of a vehicle. They show you much easier, like in the shop type situation. But I did get some tips on using some pry bars on the side, like I'm trying to do here. So I just picked up a couple of screwdriver-sized pry bars just to get some leverage on there. You can see I'm fiddling with this for quite a bit. It took me a few minutes where I was still sitting on here, and I finally learned that the way I got it off is to get the pry bar up on the arm of where the tie rod is connected. Although you see it's not connected right now, but by getting the pry bar up on the tie rod, that gives you a lot more leverage. So it creates a bigger arc, right? So you see what I'm doing right here is just a very tiny arc. I'm very close to the boot, so it's creating a tiny arc, and so therefore the end of the pry bar wants to pull away from the boot instead of pushing it straight back. And I'm going to fast forward here, and then you'll see I'm just going to jump right to getting the pry bar out on that ear where the tie rod connects, and it's going to pop right off.
We're running.
Oh, got it.
Alright, so now I brought the outer stub over to my workbench. First of all, you can see there's no inner shaft that's connected to it anymore. On this RCV joint, literally just pulled them apart like with my hand. I didn't even have to hit it. On the other RCV joint that I worked on, actually I had to hit it with the same hammer that you're going to see here. It's a little 5-pound hammer, but you just hit the outer edge of it, and it knocks the shaft out of the joint. It's just held in with this little snap ring in a groove, so it's not like super tight in. It'll pop right out. And I brought the outer stub with the CV over to my workbench. I ended up building this little jig. I drilled a hole, I think it's like over an inch in diameter. I forget exactly what it was now, to fit the outer shaft into the hole, so that I didn't have to pinch it in a vise. I tried pinching in the vise first, and it seemed like it was chewing up the splines, and I didn't want to keep banging on it. You'll see how long I have to bang on this thing, not only to get the old messed up bearings out of there, but then to put the new ones in. So it would have been, I don't know how it would have worked to try to do it in a vise, unless you have some sort of vise that actually holds splines well without damaging them. I don't know, with maybe some sort of soft metal or something like that, but I didn't have that, so I just built this little jig. I ended up, to make it big enough to fit the splines, I used a jigsaw and kind of put splines into the wood to make it hold on to it nice and tight, and it seemed to work out really well. I think I'm going to be holding on to this jig. So anyway, so this part, is just following RCV's instructions, using this little hammer and this bar. You pound the heck out of the insides here in order to get the bearings to pop out. And this is the second one that I did, and honestly, this one went way smoother than the first one. I mean, I was beating the heck out of the other one. I didn't get that one on video, but this one went relatively fast. I mean, I think, from beginning to end, it was, three-ish minutes or something. And so I'm hitting this with the hammer. You get it all the way one side, then you do the other side, and you just keep working around. There's 6 ball bearings in here, and then when they're done, you pop them all out. Then you got to get, this I don't even know what they call it, some sort of caster that holds the bearings that's inside of the joint, and it's very finicky on how to get it out. The first one that I did was way hard. It took me a long time. This one ended up sliding out relatively easy, so I'll just be silent here and let you watch the rest of getting all this
They
out.
put it on the spline in the RCV video, but
Did they have a special something to?
no, that's true. They may have had something special. I didn't notice.
They did.
Woohoo! That one went flying.
Almost got me with grease. Could have had a lens problem here.
Gary, you're standing in the line of fire.
Apparently, I'm going to move over next time. That's like a little cannonball coming out of there.
It was. that got a foot of air.
There he is, the mech and hack. Say cheese, mech and hack.
I'm working it. Working it. This one is actually much easier than the first one I did. Look at that never happened on the first one.
Really?
It took me at least 3 times as long to do the first one. I think we got all of them out now.
This is impressive.
And this thing was really hard to get out on the other one, but I'll bet you this is going to be a lot easier because everything.
Left in there?
I think I got them all. Gotta move there's so much grease in here. The whole thing just wants to flip over. If I can get it out. Oh, there we go.
There it is.
Woo!
Woo!
That's it. Now we got to clean up and put the new one in, and we'll start back up from there.
Okay.
So I fully cleaned out the CV joint, got all the grease and stuff out of there. And then getting this cartridge back in here, the new one from the rebuild kit, it was giving me a really hard time on this one. The first one that I did, getting it in was actually kind of easy, and this one gave me a whole heck of a hard time. I just kept fiddling with it, so I'm fast forwarding this for you guys.
Get these windows aligned.
And then I tried again, and it took a little while, but finally got it to drop in. It basically takes a bunch of shimmying. You want it to be very much centered in the cup, and as well as you're applying a little bit of pressure to slide it down, you want to be providing pressure on both the front and the back equally, so that it slides straight down. If there's any amount of pivoting in it, then it just won't go in because it's that tight of a fit. And of course, before you start dropping it in, follow the RCV instructions. They talk about aligning the slots on the inner cartridge with the windows on the outer. And you can see here it finally dropped in, but like I said, it was quite difficult. You got to get it precisely centered and dropping straight down. And then as I go to put the bearings back in it, it actually is pretty easy for the first couple of them. You can just pop them in by hand and then rotate, but then it becomes difficult again as soon as the bearings, enough of them get in. I think after 2, it's then difficult. But once you get the bearings in, then you got to start hammering again because it's getting tighter and tighter as you get more bearings in. Until you get to the very last one when it's the toughest. And so this is all cleaned out and ready to get the ball bearings in, so I'll let you watch.
Than what I'm hitting, because look what it's doing to it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's chewing it all up.
So I wonder what those bearings are made out of.
These things, this is a really hard metal.
Well, the shafts and stuff are 300M. I know that.
Shoot, the ball bearing. This whole thing rotated and the bearing came out.
Oh no. You're kidding.
Just gotta redo one of them.
There you go. So you have to seat the bearing, huh?
Yeah, because it's gotta get through this window. I think that's all I'm gonna be able to do by hand. It's super tight now. Oh, shoot. I think it may have happened again. Let's see. Oh, that's the wrong way. I need to go this way.
Boy, those are pretty tough. You're not even harming them, are you?
No.
Amazing.
Last one is the toughest, of course. It's still not ready. Oh shoot. Dang it. Gotta pull this out. Got way deep in there.
Well, they get to see the jig. See the fancy jig? It's all splined probably.
Look at that. Got it splined.
There we go.
Does not seem like it's moving anymore.
It doesn't.
There it is.
There you go.
Yep.
Wow. Holy cow.
There we go.
Whoa.
Rebuilt. Real time.
Wow.
Oops.
There you go. Some hard steel, man.
Woo! Alright, here we are adding.
So for this part, I got to use a new fun toy. I went and bought the DeWalt 20-volt grease gun. So it's battery operated. It's got a little pump on it. You put the cartridge of grease in it, and I will never have to pump grease with my hand again. That whole thing, ugh, such a pain. So there's a link to this DeWalt 20-volt grease gun tool up on our Northwest Sheepcast northwestsheepcast.com/Amazon, and oh my gosh, I highly recommend it. It was pumping away, and then you can see here now all the grease just comes gushing through, and it was so fantastic to just not have to do any of that pumping. It was so much faster, so much easier. The right tool
So-
makes for an easy job.
That might be enough grease.
I think it is.
So slid the boot in between here, and then slid the shaft through it because I'm gonna get this set up in here. The boot doesn't go through the knuckle, so you have to put it in here, and then we gotta figure out a way to get it set inside of there. But we gotta get it in enough. And of course, in the videos, all you have is a bunch of in the shop demos and not really how you would do it in a real world. And so it's they pry it off. So I'm hoping that it can just be pried on. Now they had a whole thing about burping it. Maybe I need to get a little band in there to burp it. Otherwise the air is gonna stop it from going.
So I finally got the right angle with the pry bar. Basically held the shaft with one hand, putting as much body weight as I could into it, and then just tried to keep the tip of the pry bar aligned with the boot, and just pushed body weight into the shaft and pushed body weight onto the pry bar.
I wonder if the reason it's not going is because of that.
And it finally snapped in.
So like if the-
And then, after you get this snapped in, you slide the
air
axle
in there
back
is
into the
stopping it
diff, you
from-
reattach the unit bearing, you get, in this case, you can see I already put on the Dynatrack ball joints, so I was ready to get everything back together again. And so as soon as this was done, it was unit bearing and brakes and starting to get it all back together again. So it was good times. Hey, thanks a lot for watching, and I hope it was helpful.
Yes.